Welcome back. Joining me again by the hearth is Owen as we dive into part 2 of our card review for the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. And
Greetings.
there he is. And today we are going to get started with the 2 new rogue cards that have been introduced. So let's kick things off with Lotus Assassin. It is a 5-mana 5/5 stealth minion, and whenever it attacks and kills a minion, it gains stealth. So on the base level, it has the same stats as Stranglethorn Tiger, which does see some play, although that is largely due to its beast tag. So by itself, I don't know how much that means. It is interesting. Whenever attacks and kills a minion, gains stealth. Five attack, 5 health means that there are going to be opportunities for it to kill a minion and survive, and then re-stealthing means it is going to be harder to remove before it kills something else. So thematically, it's very cool in that it is Assassin that, keeps stealthing up. How strong the card actually is, I think it's kind of mediocre. It's going to be difficult to extract a lot of value in it, or out of it rather. Again, it will depend on what kind of deck it's being played in. For your typical rogue decks, such as Miracle, obviously it has no place there. And even in your more value death rattly decks, which aren't as good but still get played sometimes, maybe could just see some play as a 5-drop that needs to be taken care of. I feel like it's almost going to need a different rogue archetype than what we currently have in order to see play, but that's still a possibility. The second,
Will shine in Arena, though.
yes, in Arena I think it's going to be very good. That is a fair point. The second card I am actually much more excited about, which is Counterfeit Coin. And it is the coin. It's 0 mana, gain 1 mana crystal this turn only. Rogue is notorious for being much better going second, simply because they have access to the coin, which is a combo enabler. Well, guess what? Now you can potentially have coins without having to go second. 2 of them, even. And this is very, very exciting. Rogue is a deck that does rely largely on tempo, almost no matter what archetype you're looking at. And having access to extra coins really does help with that. As I mentioned, it does enable combo against a lot of decks, particularly aggro decks. Coining out SI7 Agent on turn 2 is almost always a strong play. So this is really very, very exciting. Of course, it does work well in Miracle as well, since you can just play a turn 6 Gadgetzan Auctioneer, Counterfeit Coin, Conceal, draws you 2 cards, conceals your Auctioneer. So it's really going to do a lot, I think, for Rogue. This is actually something that Rogue fans have been talking about for a long time, well before Gadgetzan was teased. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had just the coin in our deck? Well, now you do. So this is very, very cool, and I think it's going to be a very strong option for a few different Rogue archetypes.
Yeah, definitely plays into a lot of what the pre-existing Rogue strategies are looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on, we have a interesting little, another little long line of, another member in a long line of warrior cards that care about taunt. In this case, I Know a Guy is the name of the spell, and it's a 1-mana spell, discover a taunt minion. Gotta be honest, can't say I'm super excited about this. I am dreading seeing this in Arena, because I don't really think that this is going to be the kind of card that a warrior deck is looking for, and in Constructed I also don't think that this is really going to do all that well, just because while there are good taunt minions, I think that they're varied enough across the curve that you can't reliably get something that you're looking for. So I think there's enough of them where you could discover a bunch of taunts that cost 4 or less, you could discover a bunch that cost 5 or more, and I think that more often than not, you're going to want one of those 2 extremes, but you're not really going to... I don't think there's a lot of situations that are going to come up where you're going to be happy with any taunt minion. But you never know. Maybe Bolster becomes a thing. But I'm skeptical this is good.
I think that's fair.
Next up, we'll go ahead and start moving into the neutral cards. And we'll go ahead and start off with a new Legendary Murloc to replace Old Murkeye. Although he is not even close to the same thing. We have Finja, the Flying Star. And you may not know this, but Jeremy already has a Finja in his room. You see, he can't see it. It's a ninja. Anyways, moving on to the card. It's a 5-mana 2/4 with stealth, Murloc, of course. And when this attacks and kills a minion, you get to summon 2 Murlocs from your deck. And I think that this is a really exciting card, and I'm looking forward to seeing how a bunch of people try and break it. Any sort of card effect that's going to be able to tutor specific cards from your deck can, lead to some really interesting stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what people decide to do with it. I don't think it fits into the current Murloc archetypes that we utilize right now. I don't think it fits very well into Murloc Paladin because it's kind of against your one-hit kill combo. But it does have some interesting implications with, cards of, other Murlocs like War Leader, like Bluegill. So who knows? Maybe we'll see it find its way into some sort of Murloc Shaman deck. Whether that'll be better than what we currently have for Shaman, doubtful, but it may lead to other interesting Murloc archetypes, and only time will tell.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so kind of along the same lines of summoning something from your deck, we have Patches the Pirate, another legendary. It is a 1-mana 1/1 with charge, and after you play a pirate, Patches is automatically summoned from your deck. So obviously this feeds into a very aggressive strategy. And that it is simply a 1/1 with charge. However, getting it for free out of your deck can be good. Obviously, there are cards that buff pirates. You can even, in a later turn, combo with a buff, such as Abusive Sergeant, things like that. So it is really just looking to rush down your opponent. Obviously, when you have it in your hand, it is literally just a Stone Tusk board that has the pirate tag instead of the beast tag. So it does lose a little bit of value if drawn, which I think is kind of the drawback, but for any aggressive pirate deck, definitely expect to see this card included. Our next one, we're going to go to an epic called Windup Banebot, which A, is a great name, and B, it is a 6-mana 5/5 mech. Whenever it attacks a minion and survives, draw a card. With the 5/5 stat line, there are plenty of minions that it can attack and survive. The attack... of course, at 6 mana, it means you are playing a little later in the game, which means it is a bit scarier because against non-aggro decks, there's going to be plenty of minions that will just kill it. It also does have a little bit of a scary time even against aggressive decks because they might have enough small minions / removal cards that they can kill it before you ever get to attack with it, because again, it does need to be you attacking with the minion. So overall, it can be a little difficult to get value out of it. However, if you do, it's pretty exciting because what I like about it, and is something I like about any card, is basically when you put it on the board, you're telling your opponent, hey, you'd better deal with this and you'd better do it now. Because if you don't, I'm going to get some pretty sweet value. And that's kind of the exciting part about it. How often you'll be able to get that value is a little debatable. Overall, I think the card is kind of underwhelming, but I do like that fact that it is putting your opponent on the back foot, that they have to deal with it. So that I do like.
For sure. Next card we're going to talk about is basically a druid nerf called Big Time Racketeer. He is a 6-mana, wait for it, 1/1 minion. So yes, that means that Moonglade Portal has gotten quite a bit worse because now there's the chance that their 6-mana investment gets them only a 1/1 minion. However, the Racketeer isn't alone, and he has a buddy that he gets on the battle cry. His battle cry says, when you summon him, you get a 6/6 Ogre. Bit of a flavor fail here. It does not have taunt, so your 6 mana buys you 7 mana, or your 6 mana buys you 7 power worth of stats and 7 health worth of minions over 2 bodies. I think that overall this is a okay card. I think for Arena it'll be pretty interesting to see. It's pretty much on par with Boulderfist Ogre, which is kind of like the standard for what you judge your 6-drop stats on. But it does have some added synergy with like evolve effects from Shaman. Whether this is what pushes the evolve strategy over the top remains to be seen. But nevertheless, you could still turn your dorky 1/1 into a 7-drop legendary or something. So we'll see what happens. But I think mostly the biggest implication with this card is how it affects Moonglade Portal in a negative way. Moving on from that, we have a old effect on a new body. We have the Kooky Chemist, who is basically, he is the exact same thing as Crazed Alchemist. So Crazed Alchemist's battle cry, as is the Kooky Chemist, is when it enters the battlefield, you swap the health and attack of a minion in play. So it allows your other stuff to trade in, trade more profitably, allow your guys to push for more damage, and things of the sort. However, unlike Crazed Alchemist, which is a 2-mana 2/2, the Kooky Chemist is a 4-mana 4/4. So its body is a bit more relevant, but you still get that same Chemist effect. I don't know that there are a lot of decks out there that are looking for more than 2 copies of the Chemist's effect, but the fact that there is now a duplicate of it means that if you are a deck looking for that effect, you now have more consistency in finding it. Overall, I think this is probably a medium card. Crazed Alchemist sees play in some constructed decks that are very aggressive occasionally from time to time, so this may also see play in similar decks serving a similar role. I think that it'll probably be fine in Arena. 4-mana 4/4 is a little bit under the curve, but still its effect is good enough that it could allow a small minion of yours to trade into a more expensive one. So I think that the tempo that it buys you could still make it fairly playable.
Yeah, I will say that I'm actually going to say I don't think it's going to see much constructed play at all. The decks that do run Crazed Alchemist, A, often just run a single copy, and B, are usually using it more for its utility, which is more important at a low mana cost. In fact, one of its most common uses, which is the reason why it's run in aggressive decks, is to just straight up kill a Doomsayer, which obviously is much more valuable at 2 mana than it is at 4. So in constructed, I don't think this card's going to see much play. I will move on to our next card, which is a interesting anti-aggro tech called Second Rate Bruiser. It is a 5-mana 4/5 taunt, which by itself sounds pretty unexciting. However, if your opponent has at least 3 minions, it costs 2 less, which suddenly makes it a 3-mana 4/5 taunt, which is much more interesting. How much play it'll see? Probably not a ton. There's been some of the interesting anti-aggro tech that's come out that still really hasn't seen play. Whispers of the Old Gods gave us some cards, but I don't think it's going to see a lot. However, I do think it's always a good idea to have some options as far as anti-aggro goes that aren't overwhelmingly powerful, so that it allows controller decks to have the option without it being mandatory and without it dictating its own deck type. So I do think it's a good thing to have it available in the game, even if it doesn't see a ton of play. Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that I think you're wrong. I think it actually is a pretty good anti-aggro tool, and I think that it will actually see some play, if only to counteract the board flood that Shaman currently implements.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, and that is one of Shaman's biggest strength is flooding the board, and this can help against that. So I do think that's a fair point. Alright, so our next card is Friendly Bartender, because unfriendly bartenders are no fun at all. It is a 2-mana 2/3. At the end of your turn, restore 1 health to your hero. By itself, it doesn't sound super exciting. However, against decks with a bunch of small minions, it is just that much more extra damage they have to push, either in dealing that much more damage to your life total, or wasting damage taking out this card rather than hitting your health total. I think one of the interesting interactions it has is something with with a card kind of like Holy Champion. Whenever a character is healed, it gains attack. So again, puts your opponent on that, oh, I'd better deal with this now kind of turn, which is always fun. And that because it's at the end of your turn, if you do get them both in play at the same time, it will guarantee at least 1 trigger on your Holy Champion. So it just gives them 2 different things that they really have to deal with. So it's going to be a niche card, I think, for sure. It is certainly not overtly powerful on its own, but I think there are places where it can shine, and Priest is probably going to be the best place for it.
I also think just one thing to tack onto that is that one thing to remember is that it is still a 2/3 minion for 2, which at the very worst, that's still what you expect to get as far as a body is concerned for 2 mana. And the fact that it gets you a couple extra points of life over the course of its time on the table, I think means that it also is another anti-aggression tool that you can utilize to help try and stabilize and fight off totems and things like that. So
for sure.
And also it has a little bit of a synergy with a Warlock if you're looking to play it like a Reno deck. So next up, we have a couple more anti-aggression tools, and I think that's a trend of the set that I've noticed so far, is there seems to be quite a bit of anti-aggression tools to combat the aggressive metagame that we have right now with Shaman. So this is the second coming of Zombie Chow, Mistress of Mixtures. It is a 1-mana 2/2, and its death rattle is both players gain 4 life. And I think that when Zombie Chow left standard, it really was felt by a lot of decks. A lot of slower and controlling decks or mid-range decks lost the tools that they needed in order to combat early aggression. And I think that while there is a significant difference between a 2-2 and a 2-3, I think that Mistress of Mixtures goes a long way toward shoring up that hole in a lot of slower decks game plan of trying to have something on the board to fight with that prevents them from just pushing damage into their face. So very exciting. I think it'll probably shine most in Priest, just because they're the kind of class that can really utilize the early drop. And if you're not playing dragons, I think Mistress of Mixtures will, serve a similar role that Twilight Whelp would serve. And, granted, not as strong, but still can serve it. Other decks that are not looking to push damage early will also be interested in this card. Another card that's coming up, also anti-aggression, also probably might as well be a priest card, is Fel Orc Soulfiend. It is a 3-mana, 3/7, and its effect is at the start of each of your turns, it deals 2 damage to itself. So I think that this, more often than not, reads as a 3-mana, 3/5, because in order for it to die on the opponent's turn, they would need to have dealt 5 damage to it, which is something that isn't easily going to be done by pretty much any class, at least on the 3rd turn of the game anyways, without committing multiple resources to it. I think that this will work really well in priest decks. It remains to be seen whether or not it'll be better than Injured Blademaster, but because they certainly serve similar roles. Blademaster's 4 attack is relevant when talking about cards like Totem Golem and other 4 health minions. However, the fact that it has 3 health the turn that it comes into play is always a big liability on the card. So I think that, if you're willing to trade the extra point of attack, you can get a little bit more stickiness out of the Fel Orc Soulfiend and really, kind of maybe help the priest get onto the board and start utilizing its hero power.
Right, and I think that's actually a very important point, is because there are certain cards, like let's say Northshire Cleric, that are very bad if you don't have a way of healing a minion, and Fel Orc Soulfiend pretty much always gives you a way to be able to trigger your heal effects. And it is an interesting comparison to Injured Blademaster, as I'm sure it was intended to be. And it does have that advantage, because Blademaster without, say, a Circle of Healing played on turn 3 is pretty unimpressive. Whereas Fel Orc Soulfiend on turn 3 can be pretty scary. And it's basically getting an overstated minion now for asking you to commit more mana to it later, with your hero power or other heal effects. So it's very definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, it also has a little bit of synergy with some warrior cards as well. The one warrior card from Whispers that duplicates all of your damaged minions. Rampage. Yeah, Blood Warriors. Rampage is another card that you could utilize with it. Again, probably not going to happen too often, but the fact that it is always can be counted on to be a damaged minion is relevant for not just priests but other classes as well.
Right. So it definitely has some interesting applications. And as far as officially released cards goes, that will do it. So as we kind of said at the end of the last video, and I'm going to say it again here, there is some really neat stuff coming in this expansion, and I'm really quite excited for it. I again think it's going to give a lot of new tools to classes they didn't have before, or making them better at certain things. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting expansion. But we also want to hear what you guys think. So don't forget to leave a comment below. As always, like, share, subscribe. Do all those cool things that every YouTuber tells you to do. There's a reason for it. And yeah, we hope to see you guys back here soon.